So Charlie, if you have an athlete who presents to you with either patellar or quadriceps tendinopathy, how do you think about choosing the entry points for that athlete?
So I'm going to make a lot of assumptions here. I'm going to assume this is a barbell strength training focused athlete, so they're doing some type of squat, bench press, deadlift, and accessories. When it comes to finding an entry point, the first few things I'm looking at, what was their training history? How long have they been training? What equipment do they have access to? What are their goals? And what things provoke that specific pain along their knee? So we're talking quadriceps tendon or patellar tendon. And the things I'm looking for to find an entry point, obviously once I have their training history in place, I'm trying to find out where that loading threshold is for them. Let's use the squat, for example. Let's say they're typically, when they're in their first few warm-up sets, they experience a lot of symptoms. It might get a little bit better, and then they reach, let's say like it's 80% of their max, and that's where they really start to feel that sharp pain in the bottom of the squat along that tendon. What I may do to establish an entry point, I will likely keep the same squatting frequency. I might have them warm up with something like a leg extension, slow and controlled, somewhere in that 10 to 15 rep range, maybe like 2 or 3 seconds on the way up, 2 to 3 seconds on the way down, to help warm that tendon up and to achieve that warm-up effect before they get underneath the barbell. If they're having a lot of issues with their squat, with the knees coming forward, I might switch them to a box squat on one of their days and limit how much their knees traveling forward, which will offload that tendon a little bit and might feel a little bit more comfortable, but they're still able to get a good training stimulus. So they're focused on setting back, keeping a more vertical shin angle. Another strategy on top of that is you could have them work up to a top set, let's say, a top set of 6 or 8 reps. We'll say RPE 7. And from there, and I might cue them, I want you to stay within a tolerable threshold of symptoms, meaning there isn't like a huge spike in symptoms. Tolerable for each person is going to be a little bit different. I'm essentially going to anchor it to, it might be like a 3 out of 10 pain. Ultimately, it's up to that person to decide, but I want them to stay under that threshold. From there, I might remove the box for their back down sets, take like 15, 20% off the bar, and have them go full range of motion, slow and controlled, something like 3 seconds on the way down, maybe even a pause in the bottom, allowing the knees to come forward and reintroducing the range of motion component. So that's just an example with that specific sort of archetype. Do you have anything to chime in with, Derek?
No, so most of the time I will use the same open chain knee extension, but I will use it much more in the beginning, looking at what is tolerable for them. In the grand scheme for tendinopathy, eccentrics versus heavy slow resistance, neither one's really proven superior, and we want it to be what is most tolerable for this athlete. So it's setting up wherever we are on our machine for a weight that's tolerable for them through a range of motion they can control, and really aiming to try and get some work done and warm that up. Now, like you, I often come right behind it, and after they're warm and after we've done the things that are more tendinopathy specific, we'll go into whatever their primary pattern is, like a squat, and work from there. If it is a quad tendon, quite often early on I'll try and have them push their knees a little bit forward. If it is more of a patellar tendinopathy, I'll often aim for a more vertical shin, but often being the key here because it is completely contingent upon the athlete. We have principles we work within, but what works best for one person may not work best for the other.
And in some cases, you might not even need to make a lot of modifications. It might be just as simple as dialing the load back a little bit. And that's why it's so important to kind of get a sense for who that specific person is, what their training history looks like, and also their goals and what they're looking to get back to. If it's a powerlifting athlete, they have a big competition coming up in 4 weeks, we might not be modifying that much, and it might just be a conversation setting expectations like, hey, this is going to suck for the next few weeks, but this is a very important meet for you. Afterward, obviously, that would be the time to really focus on dialing it back, but you might just need to, make very minimal modifications to get you through this period so that you can go out and compete.
And the other side of that, an athlete that doesn't have anything on the horizon, we may just be looking to work around it for a while. We don't necessarily need to squat as part of a program, even for a barbell athlete. And when I say squat here, I'm mostly referring to a barbell back squat. Like for a while, we might need to substitute it out with something like a leg press or drive it with a belt squat or something else that gives us that same stimulation, but is much less symptomatic for the athlete.
Another example of that is maybe in that off-season period for that specific athlete, they do their competition. maybe they're squatting, they're just working up to maybe one top set. Maybe they're doing multiple sets within a particular session, but maybe they just work up to one set that's comfortable and they get their other leg training on something like a belt squat or a leg press for a little while, and to get that variability within their training routine before getting ultra hyper specific once again, jumping into another competition prep, for example.